For our story, we are going to cover a story that broke last week dealing with a shooting at Fort Worth where a police officer shot a person during a home welfare check. So, the facts of the situation are that a neighbor saw a door open on a house that had been open all day long and called the police and wanted to know if their neighbor was okay. The police responded to this around 2 o'clock in the morning. They went to the home, they went outside the home, and then saw someone walking inside and basically shot the person inside with no warning whatsoever. So, is my neighbor okay? The answer is no, because we just shot them. But this is obviously a deeply problematic because you're going to check to see if someone's okay in their own home. The person walking around in their own home is your hoped for result. So, the fact that someone was moving around in their own home is not suspicious. So the police officer has since quit their job and is being charged with murder. So we're going to read a little bit of this article, and then we are going to watch the video and we'll comment on it accordingly. A former Fort Worth police officer who fatally shot a woman while she was at home playing video games over the weekend. So video games will kill you, apparently was more true than we ever realized, was arrested and charged with murder on Monday, the latest development in a case that sparked national outrage and renewed demands for police accountability. The officer, Aaron Dean, who is white, resigned earlier on Monday, hours before the police chief had planned to fire him, amid growing anger and frustration in the community that the woman, Anita Jefferson, had become yet another black person killed by the police, this time in the safety of their own home. So basically, this is Amber Guyger Part 2. If you're having flashbacks to Amber Guyger and the police officer there who was just sentenced and convicted of murder for, in that case, going to the wrong door because she thought it was her home and shooting a person inside what turned out to be their own home, if you're having flashbacks to that case, you're not alone. So this is like Amber Guyger Part 2, I guess. Police officers responded to a call from a concerned neighbor when Miss Jefferson, 28, was shot through her bedroom window. So that being enough background, let's go watch the video to see what actually happened. So this is about 2 minutes worth of video, so we'll watch this together so we can see what actually occurred.
Put your hands up! Show me your hands!
So, a couple items of note here. First of all, for like a standard welfare check, it seems a little odd to me, at least, as a civilian, and I say this as a civilian, but it seems a little odd to me that you have your gun out and drawn on a welfare check. The neighbor didn't report seeing anything suspicious, except the door being open since like all day long. It'd been open, according to the testimony of the neighbor, since like 10 a.m. or something. And so this door had been open, 12 hours, 15 hours or something. But beyond that, there were no reports of anything suspicious. There were no loud noises. There were no there's no reason, it seems to me, to go with a gun drawn, for a welfare check. Also, I would think like the first thing you would do for a welfare check might be to knock on the door rather than like going around the house. Again, I'm not a civilian, or I am a civilian. So, but it seems to me like you might knock on the door and like shout police, anyone in there, anyone okay? And even if you're going to go like around to survey the property first, it's like to have your gun out seems very, very odd to me. And as we noted in the video, he didn't even finish like his commands to like, he didn't even say, from the time he said, show me your hands or whatever, and the gun being fired. I think it's been timed at zero point 0.8 seconds. It was less than a second, I think, according to various news reports I've read on this issue. So it seems completely disproportional. And maybe there was a gun, on a counter or something, but she didn't have it in her hands. Again, the idea that someone would have a gun in their home in Texas should not be that surprising. Texas is a very gun-friendly state, and so the idea that they would have one, it seems completely disproportionate to me. And, there was no imminent threat. And so the whole thing seems completely blundered from any sort of perspective that I can understand. So, yeah. The case has resulted in a rare murder charge against the police officer only hours after the police chief announced the department was conducting the investigation. The police chief says, "I get it," saying of the widespread public anger. Yeah, I get it too. I understand that I'm presenting this in a somewhat dispassionate way because I'm trying very hard to be dispassionate about it because justice should be based on the facts. So we can look at the facts and judge them accordingly, but it is pretty atrocious based on the facts. I think that's reasonable. It showed that Miss Jefferson had been given no warning that the police officer crept in the backyard. Again, it seems unwarranted for a welfare check. Shouted, "Put hands up, show me your hands," immediately before firing a single shot. No one looked at that video and said there was any doubt the officer acted inappropriately. Well, if I may be so bold, inappropriately is a very, what's the word I want to put here? Colorful and creative characterization of it. Inappropriately is not exactly the first word that comes to mind to me. Criminally negligently would be much more on board. Whether this qualifies legally as murder or not is a whole nother issue, but at a minimum, I'd say it's criminal negligent homicide. It's like there's no basis for this, so it seems completely inappropriate to use your word at a bare minimum. The unusual and rapid developments which follows a similar case in nearby Dallas, which a black man had been shot by an off-duty officer in his own apartment. It's like, how many of these things are there where people are being shot by off-duty officers in their own apartments? It's like, man. Highlighted the long-standing tensions in Fort Worth. Of course, they're talking about Amber Geiger in the similar case, but still, it's like, how many of these things are there, right? Since June, Fort Worth officers have shot and killed 6 people. Not encouraging. Community activists also cited the 7 police shootings since early summer, 6 of them fatal, including a man who the police thought was carrying a rifle, but actually pointing a flashlight at officers, barricading himself inside the house. Yeah. Miss Jefferson had recently moved in with her mother, who was in declining health, and was selling medical equipment while she studied to enter medical school. So that's just great on top of everything else. We've lost a potential nurse or doctor, to the community on top of everything else. That's just wonderful. She had been playing video games with her 8-year-old nephew in the early hours when a neighbor called the non-emergency line at 223. The non-emergency line. It wasn't 911, it was the non-emergency line. I think there might be a problem. Why did you respond like it was an emergency? I don't know. Stating the concern that had been open for several hours. Look, I don't blame the neighbor. If I saw my neighbor's door open for multiple hours and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, I'd be kind of worried about it too. Now, whether or not I'd go over and check personally or call the police, either action seems reasonable. But the neighbor saying, look, my neighbor's door has been open for all day long. I'm kind of concerned. I call the non-emergency number. This seems like a reasonable thing. And the police respond with lethal force. And then the police wonder why it's hard in many instances to get people to cooperate with the police. I wonder why it might be difficult to get people to cooperate with the police in some situations, because maybe it's due to things like this. Could be. The authorities say Mr. Dean did not identify himself as a police officer. We heard the tape. He did not identify himself as a police officer. That would have been helpful. Police, is anyone in there? Hello. Knock on the door. Hello, police. Just checking to make sure you're okay. That would have been fine. What happened is the antithesis of okay. Miss Jefferson died in her bedroom after officers tried to provide medical assistance. Her nephew was in the room where the shedding occurred. Just fantastic. So reckless endangerment there too. The chief of police says she has every right to have a gun in her bedroom. We're homeowners in the state of Texas. I can't imagine most of us, if we saw someone outside our home that we shouldn't and have access to a firearm, wouldn't have acted very similarly. Right. Right. This is Texas. People have firearms. If you heard I mean, let's go to the frame of her. It's like you hear someone outside your home at 2 a.m. who hasn't identified themselves. Might you respond with a gun? Might you go to a gun and look around? I might. And is it okay for the police officer to shoot me? I don't think so. Miss Jefferson was killed less than 2 weeks after the conclusion in Dallas, in which Amber Geiger, a white former police officer, was convicted of murder and sentenced to 10 years in prison, as we all remember that case. That case took place in a neighboring county under a different district attorney, but many could not fault to file comparisons. Yeah, I think it's a comparable case. Over the weekend, activists who earlier this month stood outside the courthouse to demand justice came to Fort Worth for a vigil. Yeah, I would think so. I saw many of the same faces. Sure, why not? It's a next door county, and it's a very relevant issue. We've literally not had a chance to recover. There's just this deep anger and hurt in the streets that you cannot be safe in your own apartment, you cannot be safe in your own home, you cannot be safe in your own car. Well, I join the concerns of the people in the Dallas-Fort Worth area over this story, so yeah. So that is the story of the Dallas-Fort Worth officer who shot and killed a woman in her own home during a welfare check. You know, I think it's just the most bizarre set of events because we want people in principle to be concerned about their neighbors, right? We want to belong in a community. And if you saw someone with their door open for like all day long and it's 2 a.m. and their door is still open, I think you might be reasonably concerned. Something might be wrong. You know, that person might be in danger. They might have fallen in their home. They might be trapped. You know, there might be a whole bunch of situations, or they might be asleep on the couch and just simply forgot, and the door being open is a danger. You know, so it's like there's a whole host of reasons you might want to call the police, and I think we would encourage that. But if the response to that is the police officer comes to your home and shoots you through the door or through the window when they're checking to make sure you're okay, and they see someone moving around, and they say, oh, show me your hands, and then fire without saying police, it's like, it's so wrong. So it's like, how can we build a community where people want to look out for each other and people want to call the police when the police respond this kind of way? It's so completely inappropriate to the circumstance. There's no reason to have your gun drawn, you know, in this situation. It's like, even if you made the decision to like go around and look outside first, which seems like a reasonable decision, although not the decision I would make in that viewpoint. But if that's your viewpoint, it's like, why do you have your gun drawn? There's no reason, there's no cause. And then like, you don't identify yourself as police or anything, and then you shoot less than a second after you see someone move inside. And the whole thing is just bizarre. So I don't know what this person ultimately should be convicted of. I don't know if murder is the appropriate sentence here. Based on the facts, I think a lesser charge probably is ultimately warranted rather than murder too, because it was unlike Amber Geiger, where Amber Geiger, according to her own testimony, made the decision outside the room, you know, and it seems like that's not really the situation here based on what we can see on the video. So I wouldn't think murder is the appropriate charge. I'm thinking manslaughter. I'm thinking criminally negligent homicide. But definitely there needs to be some sort of criminal repercussions. And we will follow this case as it continues. And I hope, if nothing else emerges, that the police will be better trained so they will stop doing this to people, because there's just no cause for it in this factual situation. Not everything needs to be taken up to a level 11. You know, the police should be better trained in, you know, escalating of threat, and they should be better responding in terms of that. They shouldn't be responding every time, all the time, all the way to 11. And so everything went wrong here. And I don't blame members of the community for being skeptical of the police, because I see this and I'm like, I can't blame you in being skeptical. I'm kind of skeptical too. There's just so much wrong with this here. It's hard to fathom. It's a truly horrible situation. And I truly hope some measure of justice will get done, whatever that might ultimately wind up being.